up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video of painting. So today we are going to be prepping and painting one of the skateboards that were received from the Mazda truck that we're doing again. If you don't know, if you haven't watched the last few videos, go back and watch those. That will tell you why this is back here in the shop, and I haven't really leaked what we're doing. What we're doing forward from here on out to it is pretty much here for the winter. So all the way, the next show is going to be, I believe he said April. I don't remember what date it is, but Mini Nats is coming up in April. So we have this truck all the way pretty much till April. Obviously want to try to get it done before then because it's got other things going to get done. But next show is April, so he's not really in a hurry for it to get back. But we are doing upgrades on this, so stay tuned for that because that's the next series we'll do. If you haven't watched the original series from where we took this from just a stock truck pretty much all the way to the graphics and the paint and all that stuff, so go back and watch those. Those are from pretty much over a year ago, so go back and watch those. But today we are going to be prepping this and getting it painted all the way to the factory blue color, because what this is for a showpiece for the truck that he wanted to do. So we're going to be putting this factory blue color on this skateboard and doing all the graphics that are on this truck on this board. So if you haven't done one of these, pay attention. This is going to be like a little series of content here coming at you guys that will show you how to do these. It's not really too complicated if you know paint and sanding and all that stuff. So we're going to get to it. I'm going to prep this thing. It's pretty much going to get masked on the front side. We're not painting both sides. We're going to leave it wood on one side, paint on the other side. These are really popular for mini truckers. They like to have something to hang up in their garage or take to shows with them. So it's really, really popular. So we're going to be doing this exactly like the graphics that are on this truck. I might switch it up a little bit. I might put something a little bit different or lay them out a little bit different than what they are on the truck, because we don't have that much room on a skateboard compared to a full-size vehicle. So that's what's coming up. So stay tuned for that here in this video. Pretty much going to be Scotch-Brighting it, sanding it. I'm pretty much going to sand it with 400, 600, tape it up, clean it, and get some paint on it. So, but I want to give you guys a quick update on the Civic here. We have finally got the rebar in for this car. Back when I first got the car, it was bone stock, and since I switched the front end from a 2000 to a 96 to 98, because there is a difference. The front ends are a lot different compared to a 99 2000 compared to a 96 to 98. So when I did all that conversion, everything that I took off was pretty much rusted. So I sold some of it. Some of it I just threw away because it was trash. And the rebar was one thing that I threw away from that because it was just rotted. It was rotted like the rest of the car. So ordered a new one. They're really, really cheap. I don't even think I paid $100 for this thing. So, but what this is going to do is this bumper here, it's back from the early 2000s. This car was made in 2000, obviously because of the 2000, but this bumper from 96 to 98, that's what it fit on. It doesn't fit a 90 or 99 to a 2000, so that's why I did the front end conversion swap. But this bumper, back in the day, used to make body kits out of poly ABS, which means that you can pretty much bend this thing in half and it'll go back to shape. And I've been running this bumper without a rebar for, I don't know, I've probably been this way. I think I did the front end swap on it and painted it probably 4 years ago. So I've been running it without a front crash bar on it, which isn't safe, but there practically wasn't one on there to begin with when I got the car because it was so rusted off. It was just waiting to fall off. So it was good to get rid of it. But what happens is with these bumpers that are poly instead of fiberglass, they're really, really heavy. This bumper probably weighs a good 10, 12 pounds probably. I mean, it's no joke. It's a heavy bumper. You can see how thick the plastic is, but you can literally fold this thing in half and it will just go back to shape because it's just that well built. Obviously, it doesn't, totally match like OEM specs as far as fitment and things like that. So I've had to modify it to fit the car that the front end that I put on this thing, but it doesn't match that bad as far as fitment, anything like that. But over time, if you don't have a rebar on a car that has one of these bumpers, they tend to just sag because they weigh so much. So this thing sagged so much because there's nothing in the inside of here holding it up. And that's why I went ahead and bought another bar and foam to put in there, because it's gonna make this bumper a lot more sturdy and it won't sag down as much, which means the grill is gonna fit a lot better than what it did. I had a gap like this much between the grill and the bumper. And that's just how much it sagged over time. So we got that on, got that fitted up. I am just dry fitting it now. I'm going through, I'm putting the bumper on it, putting the grill back on it, doing a little bit of modifications here and there, because this grill is an aftermarket grill as well, because you can't use the grill from a 2000 to a 98. They're all different. That's what mainly the difference is on these Hondas, is the headlights and the grill area are just totally different from those 2 years. They're different generations. So this grill, it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't really fit that great. So I've got a couple ideas that I want to do. I mean, most people won't argue with that, but to me it just drives me nuts. It's because the bumper is this plastic, and it's just the way it is. After time, this plastic and this area, it just doesn't, it goes down, so it needs to be folded back up. Or what I'm thinking is I'm going to drill. It's got a little bit of plastic on the inside, so what I'm thinking is I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to put screws going from the bottom up into this grill down here. There's not much room. That's the only thing I worry about. Not much room at all, but that's one way I can fasten it to this, is to do that, put screws on the bottom of it, put screws to the bottom so that way it's attaching, or maybe try to do, I don't think I can get a bolt in there. There's just no room inside there, so a bolt probably will not be able to, I won't be able to do that just because there's no room. Or I might just cut this. I want to cut it out anyways. I don't like the way this mesh is from the aftermarket. I don't know why they did this. On factory, they're 2 separate pieces, but they're actually one on this. So I'm thinking about cutting the center out of it. Cutting the center grill portion out, because I think it looks like crap. It doesn't really match anything Honda-wise. Honda grills are usually black inside here, and they don't look like crap like that. So I'm thinking about cutting it out anyways, which will release this bottom portion, and it will sag with the bumper. I don't know how much, because it's a really thick plastic, and it's not like a soft plastic, it's a hard plastic. So these things, I've shattered probably 3 of these already. They're just so cheap that I keep buying them and putting them in the car. That way it's not without a grill, but over time the wind just hits it, and it shatters it over time. So they're really, really thick, hard plastic. They're not like plastic like this, like the soft rubbery kind. So I'm just sitting here kind of contemplating on what I should do. Some body kits that you buy for these cars from back in the day, especially the fiberglass ones, they usually have the grill built inside of it, which is good. But it's not, because you have to do all your mounting points and everything, because you have to make your own mounting points at that point. Just because the fitment on them was not really that great. This one that mounts up fine, it just doesn't fit on the bumper side of it. So I'm sitting here just contemplating what I should do, or, you know, should I just mold it into the bumper? And I'm thinking that's a bad idea because how much this bumper flexes, and with how windy it gets out here in the country, over time I'm afraid it's just going to crack back out. So I don't think that's a really good idea, because I don't want to have to redo this whole bumper again over time, you know, after a while. So if you have any ideas, if any of you guys are fabricators or you mess with the custom stuff and you've ran into like these cars, or you have an idea, I've also tried to, I'm trying to locate, another idea I've got is I'm trying to relocate a factory grill from like a 96 to 98. Evidently, over the last 4 or 5 years, these grills are really, really expensive. You used to be able to buy them, like this aftermarket grill is like 15 bucks. You just have to paint it. Now the factory grills are like $100+, so they're really, really expensive. So I'm trying to locate one that is I can use. It's not destroyed, but I just have to paint it. So that's what I'm trying to do, because I'm thinking the factory grill will fit a lot better than this aftermarket one. And it just might be that way. It might just be an aftermarket bumper versus aftermarket grill does not line up worth the crap. But a factory grill and an aftermarket bumper might, because that factory grill is really, really flimsy. To me, it feels like this area down here on this one just is not made right. It needs to come down more at an angle, kind of like the bumper. And I think the factory one has more of a slope to it. So some of the things I'm working on here, I probably won't make videos on, just because it's going to take me a while putting the bumper on, putting it on, you know, moving things around, trying to locate a factory grill. Or if any one of you have a factory grill just laying around, let me know. I'll buy it off of you. You know, as long as it's in good shape, it's got all the mounting points, because I'm thinking about just cutting the center out of it and making a custom mesh grill behind it, kind of like the bumper when I go to do it on its final assembly. But I just need something that looks better than that. You know, it might look good from here, but when you get close to it, it just drives me nuts. There's that much space below it, and I think a factory grill will work a lot better than me trying to cut this thing up and modifying it. But I mean, this won't hurt me to cut this up. I might just cut it out and see if it does move a little bit more than what it should. So that's a little bit of update on the Civic. And another thing that I've been doing, I'm just gonna put this up here. Another thing I've been doing is, this car it's got low miles. It's got like 100,000 miles on it, which is really low for the car. It just was a New Jersey car, so like the rust is terrible on it. So when I get the car done painted, I want to eventually do the engine bay. And if I end up taking this motor out of it, even though this motor still runs really, really strong, it just looks like crap. And it's got low miles on it. I'm thinking about K-swapping it. You know, if any of you guys are Honda guys and you know anything about K-swapping, obviously you can buy kits and all the other stuff, but you know what I'm talking about as far as K-swapping a Honda, and it's probably the best. I really want to put a B series in it. That was the goal with this car. Eventually put like a B18 C1 in it, a Type R motor, ITR motor. But looking at the prices now and actually diving into it, you know, I can buy a B series for a little bit less than a K-swap. A whole K-swap is going to be around 8 or 9 grand with everything included, the motor, trans, all that, and everything to go with it, swapping it over into this car. Or I just buy, you know, a B series, you know, ITR Type R motor out of a 2000 is like 7-8 grand. You know, they're expensive right now. So B series are really expensive. K series is expensive as well, but you know, you can make a ton more power on a K series motor than you can a B series, and pretty much leave the internal stock on a K series on the block side of it and be fine, and boost it and run a ton of power to it. Not that I'm trying to do that with this car, but I don't think I've explained the whole, you know, meaning behind redoing this whole car, because I mean, a lot of people think it's just a waste of time, but to me, I've got plans. I want to do this thing up because I believe in the next 5 or 10 years, especially these EK Civics, hatch or coupe, they're going to be really hard to find So that's the reason behind me doing this whole car, because I want to make it really, really nice, do it right, put a proper engine setup in it. And I'm not looking to make a ton of power, but if I want to down the road, I can do that because I'll have the platform to do it. This single overhead cam motors, people are building them now, but they don't last long. You don't make really good power on them. And it's just, they're pretty much dogs. You know, this thing probably has maybe 90 horsepower in it. And everywhere I go, if I get on a highway or something like that, it just doesn't have any get up and go. So that's my thought, rather than doing a B series swap in it, which would be easier than a K series. But K series, it's just, I think longevity will do this car more justice than it would a B series. But a B series would look really cool just because it's that era. It's from that, you know, that era where these cars were tuners. You know, all that stuff from the early 2000s. That's what most people did, was B swap them, or if they're an SI, they had B swap motors in them already, B16s. And I just want to kind of leave it, not really, obviously it's not going to be original no more, but as far as the era is concerned, from that early 2000s, mid 2000s, it's going to be period correct, you know, that tuner type world. And that's what I'm going for here. And another surprise is I've found the color that I'm going to be doing this car. And I'm not going to reveal that until I paint it. Obviously, I got to keep you guys in suspense. So things are coming. Once I come back from vacation, tomorrow we leave for vacation. So this is the last video I'll put out. So painting the skateboard deck, going through the process, showing you guys how to do that. We're not going to clear it or anything like that. But when I get back from vacation, I want to start finishing that, putting the designs and stuff on it, painting it, working on a truck, and working on the Civic. I'd like to have the windows cut out of it within a week or two of me being back from vacation. So things will move. Once I get the windows cut out of this car and I tear down the truck and get it ready for whatever we're doing to that, because the truck's got to get fully torn down too again. So there's going to be a couple cars in here that I'm bouncing back and forth on. But the Civic is really close, after I get the windows cut out of it, to being ready for paint, if that makes any sense. I know it looks far along away from being painted, but it's already primered. It's pretty much already ready to be sanded. All I have to do is tear the doors off, you know, prep the jams, tear the trunk lid off, prep the trunk jam, and make sure the front end fits before I start getting it ready for paint, and make sure I like everything before I paint it. And then obviously we got to re-seam seal some of the gaps back here. You know, like I was stating in another video, that it leaked rain really bad because it's running down into the seam sealer inside the trunk. So we got to redo the seam sealer on the back end of the car, and anything else that I might find, I got to re-seam seal. But that stuff will go really, really quick. Once I get the windows cut out of it, I'll be a lot more motivated to work on it, and things will start happening really, really quick between these two builds. I could probably have this thing torn down in a day. Probably 3-4 hours, I could probably have this thing all the way torn down, totally apart, because I already did it once. It's just, you got to make sure you don't scratch anything, obviously, because it's got a nice paint job on it. But yeah, this whole thing's got to get torn down. Glass has got to come out of it. You know, back of the bed's got to come off. All that stuff, fenders, doors, everything's got to come off of it. This it's custom liner up here for the sunroof, drawback sunroof, has got to come off again. And that's probably going to be the worst part, is this thing was a pain to deal with last time. So we got to tear this whole thing back apart again. But that comes with that's part of it, you guys. If you get in this part of it, tearing things down, making sure it's done right, you know. But yeah, things are going to start rolling really, really quick, I believe, hopefully, when we come back from vacation. So I will not be uploading for at least a week and a half, probably 2 weeks, with any new content. So if you haven't, go back and watch the old videos, and you'll see how, especially like the truck, how far it's come from when I first initially got it to what it is right now. So we're gonna jump into the skateboard. We're gonna get things ready. So hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And thanks for watching like always. See you next time. So I got some sealer down on this. Prepped everything with 400, got it taped up. So I went ahead and baked it because you can see there's a bunch of imperfections in it. I should have primed this. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. Some are and some aren't. Usually you can get away with 400, 600 and sealing them, but I'm really trying to get this thing pretty smooth. But there's just a bunch of imperfections in the wood. So I baked it for probably a good 20 minutes. I'm going to take some 600 on a DA and I'm going to try to get most of this all out. It's really bad, like right here you can see. You don't want to paint over that stuff, you want to get it all smooth. There's enough sealer on here, I should be able to sand it, smooth it, and probably put another coat of sealer on top of it after that, and then we'll put our paint. So I'm going to go ahead and sand it, get it ready, see what we got to do next. All right, so I got everything sanded down. There were some areas that were really pretty deep craters in the wood, so I went ahead and just got some spot putty. It's drying right now. It's about ready to be sanded. I've got some 400. So when you got something like this, and like I said earlier, I should have just used primer and primed it a couple times and then sanded it, sealed it, and I would have been not having to deal with this. But I went ahead and sealed it, and first coat of sealer, I saw that there were a lot of imperfections in the wood, so I sealed it pretty hard the second time, and then I just baked it. So you can do that, that's fine, as long as you bake it and it gets, you know, everything's ready to be sanded. Sealer is kind of hard to sand depending on what brand of sealer you're shooting. This is a House of Color, so it sands pretty much just like primer once it flashes off, because that 3000 system's it's a 2-in-1, so it's primer and it's sealer. It's only sealer when you over reduce it 4:1 to 2. So it sands pretty good, but a lot of companies, sealer isn't meant to be really sanded. A lot of people like to put base down and sand the base instead, because sealer just kind of gums up. So in that case, if you're using something like that as far as with sealer goes, I get some wax and grease remover, and after I bake it, I'll do like get my DA and I'll get some 600 or 400 and I'll spray it down with some wax and grease remover and I'll sand it, and it makes it sand so much easier. You just gotta be careful, because it does wax and grease dries really quick, so you gotta get all that sludge off before it dries. So you gotta work pretty quick, but it does work really, really well, especially if you're doing like a really small spot like I did on this. It would have worked really, really well, but that's just a little bit of a trick. I like to sand, if I need to, I like to sand the sealer more than what I do with base coat. A lot of guys are opposite, just because they think the base coat sands better. Me being at work, and if I had to sand the sealer that I use at work, we use BASF Diamond, and it kind of tends to gum up on a DA, or if you're doing it by hand. So I use a little bit of wax and grease with it, and it does really, really well. You just, like I said, you got to work pretty quick to get that sludge off, because once that sludge dries, it's not able to just be sprayed down and wiped off. You got to re-sand it. So you just got to work pretty quick at it. Don't let any of the wax and grease dry on your prep panel, because once you put base coat on it, you'll be able to see the run where the wax and grease ran down on. But other than that, it's pretty easy to sand. So if you guys are having trouble with sanding your sealer and it's just gumming up on you, try using some wax and grease and wet it down once it's dry, and then you'll see that it sands so much easier. Just like wet sanding clear, it's exactly like that. So it works really, really well. You just got to use a lot of wax and grease if you're doing something big. like I said, it works really, really well on small spots. So I'm gonna get this spot putty sanded down. I've got some 400 with some wax and grease on a block. I'm gonna block these down real quick, and then I will end up resealing this one more time and getting this stuff locked in there, and then we'll go on to our base coat. Alright, so I pretty much went ahead, just blocked it back down. You can see 400 came out really, really smooth. So I'm gonna do a light coat of sealer, let it flash off, and then I'll put another coat that's a little bit heavier. That way it locks all this in here, and it doesn't, what we call is ring up on us. So light coat first. If you got any breakthroughs like this, no matter what you're doing, wood, metal, if you got burn through areas, you can see the bottom, just put a really light coat, make it wet, don't make it dry, and then let it flash off and go back over with that a little bit medium wet coat, and you won't have any issues. You can go keep moving forward. So, and this is what I mean by a light coat. You can still see through it. It's just on there just to give it some type of a blanket over top of what you just sanded through. And by the time this flashes off, you go put another coat on top of it. You can do a little bit heavier, and it'll just seal all this off perfectly without ringing up around any of the edges that you broke through. So it's looking really good, looking really smooth, so we're gonna keep moving forward. One coat, we'll do one more. Looking really nice. So I've got the booth on pretty warm today. It's kind of cold outside, so I've got it set to about 75, 77-ish, somewhere around there. So the base coat's drying really, really quick. But another tip, if you're having trouble, if you're shooting solvent and water, if you really want to move it and get it flashed off real quick, some sort of an air source on the panel, it'll actually flash it off really, really quick. Does really, really well with water, obviously, because that's what it takes to flash water to get it dry. Solvent, it works as well if you have the heat on. Give it some of that air movement. Helps a ton when you're trying to speed things up, and rather than waiting, you know, a few minutes, you can go back over really quick. Now, I'm not being really too picky about how I'm laying this color down, because it's a small area. Skateboard, obviously, the metallic's going to lay pretty well, and we're going to be putting graphics over most of this, so there's going to be more layers and layers and layers over this. So I'm not really being really too picky about it. I'm just making sure it's that solid stock blue color that we used on the truck. Now this color blue is really transparent, so that's why I used a black sealer, because it covers really well over it, and that's what I did on the truck. But when you're trying to match panels or match a car, if you're blending into it, always go by with what the color says for what valley shade of sealer or primer that you need to use in order for coverage. You never want to kind of stir away from that, but being this is a custom panel we're doing, I'm doing it exactly like I did the truck. That way, if it does sit next to the truck, it's going to match exactly like the truck. And if you're doing a big project like this, you want to write everything down, especially if you're trying to match something. Make sure you do your due diligence and just write every little thing down, because you can forget pretty easily. Especially when you're doing multiple colors like I did on the truck. I had to write every little thing down if I had to change a color or make a color, and how many coats I used, the coverage, just in case, like for instance on that truck, if you guys haven't been watching, it came back in for a spot repair, so I was able to do that really quickly because I wrote everything down, and I want to do the exact same thing as I did on the truck, what I wrote down to what I did on the skateboard. Now the next step, you can either let it just sit and flash off, you can bake it, whatever, you can clear it if you really wanted to, but I don't want to have a really big edge where I taped it off, so I'm going to let this flash off, and once it gets done and dry, we're going to move on to the next step of laying the graphics down on top of it, and move on. We're not going to clear it. A lot of stuff I do clear before I put graphics down, but with this, I'm just going to straight move on to laying graphics on it and not really build up an edge on the side of the skateboard. Really, because I'm going to be clearing it a lot. I'm going to put a lot of clear on it because it does have all those graphics, all that pinstriping, and I'm going to smooth it all out. So in the end, it is going to get a lot of clear, so I don't want to add to that. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this stuff. If you're having an edge on something like this or a panel or whatever, just try not to build it up because it's going to be harder to sand it down and get rid of it. I'm not going to clear the whole skateboard. I'm just clearing this one side once all the graphics are done and the pinstriping's done. So I'm not trying to add to that edge at all. But being this is just kind of like a showpiece for the truck, I'm not really too worried about it either. So just keep that in mind though. You don't want to have a big edge on anything. It just causes it to, wear down even faster. Something could catch it and tear it, so just be mindful of that little stuff like that. So I'm gonna clean out my gun here and get this baked off. So I just want to put out this little video really quick before I go on vacation. And then once I get back from vacation, we can, proceed to laying the graphics out, designing it exactly how we did the truck and match the truck. So I just want to get this done before I go on vacation. That way when I get back, it's nice and dry. I can tape on. I don't have to worry about anything peeling up. It's just something that's going to be sitting around anyways until we get the truck done. So get this based and get it ready to be taped up. So I just want to show you guys the prepping process. If you're ever interested in doing skateboards or anything that's small that you're putting, painting for something, for whether you're going to sell it or if it's for your own project, it just shows you guys what it entitles to get something like this painted. Like I said, it's not really that big of a deal. Just make sure you go through the processes, make sure you prep it right, make sure everything's nice and smooth before you put the base coat on, and you won't have any issues after that. So I'm going to give you guys one more shot of the skateboard, and then we're going to get this thing baked off. turned out really, really well. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. And like I said, the next video, it'll be a while. I'm going on vacation for a week or so. So just, you know, keep checking back on the channel for new videos, because this one will come up pretty quick when I get back. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe too. Later.